walked into my living room and froze. My husband, my mother, my son, and my own sister were sitting together on the sofa, like they had been waiting for me. "What's going on?" I asked, already feeling my chest tighten. My son looked at me and said, "Mom, sit down. You need to accept a new reality. You're not running this family anymore." Then he added quietly, "Aunt Bryn makes Dad happier now." I didn't argue. I just turned around and left. The next day, I had 118 missed calls. Before I continue, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. Now let me take you back to how all this started. That night, the wind cutting across the runway at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson felt like ice against my skin. I had just landed after 3 exhausting days in New York, repairing a major deal my husband Marcus had nearly destroyed with his arrogance. I was beyond tired. My eyes burned from lack of sleep. My shoulders ached from carrying my laptop everywhere. All I wanted was a hot shower, a glass of wine, and the quiet of my home. I wanted to tell Marcus that I had fixed everything, that Sterling Ridge Realty, the company we had built over 22 years, was safe for now. I pulled into the driveway of our Buckhead home and noticed the lights on in the living room, glowing against the dark lawn dusted with frost. That alone felt strange. By that hour, the house was usually quiet. Marcus in his office, our 21-year-old son Jerome in his room. When I opened the door and dropped my keys into the bowl by the entrance, the silence wasn't peaceful. It felt heavy, like the air before a storm. "Hello," I called out. "Marcus, Jerome, I'm home." "Simone, we're in the living room," my mother's voice replied. My heart clenched. My mother lived far away. Why was she here on a Tuesday night? I rushed toward the living room, afraid something terrible had happened, but what I walked into wasn't a family emergency. It felt more like a trial. They were all there, seated neatly on the leather sofa I had chosen myself. Marcus sat in the middle, dressed perfectly, but he wouldn't look at me. On one side was my mother, sitting straight and tight. On the other was Bryn, my younger sister. And in the armchair beside her sat my son. No one was crying. No one looked upset. They looked decided. "Is everyone okay?" I asked, my voice unsteady. I stepped forward, but Jerome stood up and blocked my way like I didn't belong there. The warmth I had poured into him for 20 years was gone from his eyes. "Mom, sit down," he said flatly. "Listen, and don't make this difficult. You have to accept a new reality. You're not in charge of this family anymore." I turned to Marcus. "Why aren't you saying anything?" He finally looked up, his expression a mix of pity and irritation. "It's finished, Simone. We're done." Then Jerome pointed at my sister. "Aunt Bryn makes Dad happier now. She understands him. You don't." My world tilted. I stared at Bryn, the sister whose rent I had paid, whose career I had saved, the one I had always protected. She was wearing a silk blouse that looked exactly like one from my own closet, and then I noticed Marcus's hand resting on her knee. My mother cleared her throat. "We didn't want you to hear this from someone else. We wanted to handle it as a family. You've been married to your work for years, Simone. Marcus needs someone who's present, not someone glued to a screen." "Mom," I whispered. My voice shook in a way I didn't recognize. "You're really supporting this?" "I'm supporting their happiness," she replied, lifting her chin. "They love each other. You can't stand in the way of that." Bryn glanced at me with a small smile, then looked down at her hand. That's when I saw it. A diamond ring glittered under the ceiling lights. Not just any ring. My ring. The antique ring Marcus had given me for our anniversary, the one I had searched for everywhere, the one that had vanished from my jewelry box months ago. "That's mine," I said, my voice trembling with a heat I could barely contain. Marcus shrugged. "It suits her better. You never cared about things like that anyway." Then Jerome spoke again, his voice firm and distant. "Dad's keeping the house. I'm staying here. It would be best if you leave. You bring too much tension." In one evening, I lost my husband, my sister, my home. and my son walked me out of a life I had built with my own hands. Are you really choosing this? I asked Jerome, my voice finally breaking. Are you choosing her? That's when he snapped back. She's the only one who actually listens to me. You just throw money at me and tell me what to do. Dad and Bryn treat me like an adult. I looked at all of them, my husband, my sister, my mother, and my son. The 4 people I trusted most. In that moment, it felt like my entire world was crumbling in front of me. They weren't just hurting my feelings. They were tearing apart my life. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stay upright. I refused to fall apart in front of them. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't beg. I lifted my head and stared straight at Marcus until he couldn't hold my gaze anymore. You really think you've won? I said quietly. You think you can erase everything I built just because you got tired and selfish? Don't create drama, Bryn said in a syrupy sweet voice. Let's be adults about this. Adults? I laughed softly, without humor. You have no idea what's coming. Enough, Marcus snapped. I've already spoken to my lawyers. Everything is handled. You need to leave. Leave? I looked around the room. I chose every detail here. I paid for this house, every wall, every inch. You're not welcome here anymore, Jerome said coldly. That was the moment something inside me broke for good. I took one last look at my son, at the stranger he had become, and nodded. All right. I didn't grab my coat. I already had spare keys in my pocket. I walked straight to the door. Where do you think you're going? My mother called out, a touch of panic in her voice. Simone, we need to talk about the agreement. Marcus is willing to be generous if you sign tonight. I didn't answer. I stepped outside into the frozen Atlanta night. The cold air hit my face and dried the tears before they could fall. I got into my car and started the engine. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw them through the window, laughing, opening a bottle, celebrating like I had been erased from existence. I drove into the darkness, gripping the steering wheel until my hands hurt. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing clearly. The woman they had controlled, depended on, and taken for granted was gone. And the woman driving away wasn't the same person anymore. If you're listening right now and you feel this anger with me, tap the like button and type 1 in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone, because what happened next made everything before it look small. An hour later, the city lights blurred into streaks of red and gold through my windshield. My head spun with images, Bryn's smile, the ring on her finger, Jerome's cold stare. But beneath the shock, something stronger was waking up inside me. Survival. The gaslight had been on since the airport, and soon I had no choice but to pull into a lonely 24-hour station along I-285. The cold cut through my coat as I stepped out. My hands shook when I slid my platinum card into the pump, the same card I used for everything. Processing. Then, denied. Please see attendant. That didn't make sense. I tried again. Same result. A knot tightened in my chest. I went inside and grabbed a bottle of water and some gum, then swiped my debit card. Nope, the cashier muttered. Try again. I did. Declined. Card blocked or no funds. Got cash? My heart slammed against my ribs. I opened my banking app. Access denied. Company account denied. Savings denied. That's when it hit me. Marcus hadn't just removed me from the house. He had shut off my life, my money, my access, everything. This wasn't sudden. It had been prepared, planned. He hadn't wanted me to walk away. He wanted me desperate enough to crawl back. With shaking hands, I dug through my purse and found 3 wrinkled bills and some loose change. $60 in total. That was all I had. I paid for $20 of gas and climbed back into my car, trembling. Not from the cold, but from the horrifying truth that in just one night I had gone from everything to almost nothing. I couldn't go to a hotel, I didn't have a card for a deposit. I couldn't go to my mother's place, and Bryn's door was never an option. So I kept driving until I saw a flickering neon sign that simply said, vacancy. It was the kind of roadside motel truckers use to sleep for a few hours between routes, the kind of place where the air feels tired. Prepaid, the night clerk said through thick glass. $50 for the night. I handed over 50 of my last $60. He slid a key across the counter. Room 12. The room was ice cold. The heater rattled and pushed out air that smelled like burnt dust. I sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, still in my business suit, arms wrapped tight around my coat. My phone lit up in my hand. No messages that said sorry. No come back. Just calls. 118 of them. Most from a number I recognized immediately, Marcus's private attorney. Then the emails arrived. Subject, marriage agreement. Subject, immediate NDA required subject. Termination notice, Sterling Ridge Realty. I opened the last one first. It was from the HR director, the woman I hired, the woman I trained. Effective immediately, your position as Chief Operating Officer has been terminated for cause, it read. Allegations include corporate misconduct and professional negligence. I let out a short, shaky laugh in the empty room. Misconduct? Negligence? I was the one who worked through the night checking financial reports, the one who knew every zoning rule by heart. Marcus still asked me how to export a file. Then my phone buzzed again, a message from Jerome. For one tiny second, a foolish part of me hoped it was an apology. It wasn't. Mom, please don't make this harder. Dad says he'll cut my tuition and trust fund if you fight the divorce. He promised me a VP position next year if I support him. You always told me to be ambitious. I'm just doing what you taught me. Please understand. I dropped the phone like it had burned my skin. That was the final eraser stroke. Marcus hadn't just taken my money and my job. He had used both to buy my son. I curled into a ball on the stiff mattress and finally gave in. I cried for the little boy I read stories to every night. I cried for the sister I defended in school. I cried for the man I believed in when all he had was a borrowed suit and big dreams. When the tears slowed, something else took their place. Cold. Solid. They thought they had erased me. They thought blocking cards and changing passwords meant they had taken my power. They'd forgotten something. They forgot who built the walls they were standing behind. They forgot who wrote the contracts, designed the systems, and knew every weak joint in the structure. Marcus believed the company ran on charm. He was about to learn it ran on my mind. He had taken the front door, but the builder always keeps another way in. I stared at the water-stained ceiling until the dark began to thin into gray. I wasn't Simone the wife anymore. I wasn't Simone the mother. I was Simone the architect. And I was about to rebuild everything, my way. Sleep never came. The highway outside whispered all night, but it was my thoughts that kept me awake. The flashes wouldn't stop. The past wouldn't stay buried. If I was going to understand how I landed on that mattress with $10 to my name, I had to go back. All the way back. I grew up in a small town in rural Alabama, the oldest of 2 daughters. My father passed away when I was 7, leaving my mother to raise us alone. Something in her changed that year, or maybe it simply showed its true shape. She needed admiration, she needed center stage, and she chose which child would give it to her. Bryn was beautiful from the start, soft curls, bright eyes that made strangers smile. I was the quiet one, brown hair, serious face, solid. I was the responsible one. Bryn was the star. When I turned 18, I ran into the kitchen with a letter in my hand. I had been accepted into Wharton with partial aid. I had worked 3 jobs all through high school to cover the rest. Mom, I got in. She was painting Bryn's nails at the table. That's nice, she said without looking up. Lower your voice. Bryn has a headache. But it's Wharton. She finally looked at me. There was no excitement in her eyes, just calculation. We need to talk about that money you saved, she said. My stomach dropped. My tuition? Well, Bryn's been invited to a modeling contest in Miami. It could be her big break. But the fees and travel, it's expensive. That was the first time I realized something important. In that house, my dreams were optional. Hers were sacred. You're the strong one. You're smart. You'll always find a way. That's what my mother used to tell me. You can work another year, study at night, but Bryn is sensitive. This is her dream. You wouldn't want to take that away from her, would you? Family sacrifices for each other. So I gave them the money. Of course I did. From the time I was a teenager, I had been trained to believe my worth came from what I could give. I was the one who held everything together. Bryn was the one meant to shine. She went to Miami. She didn't get any offers. The money disappeared on shopping trips and amusement parks, and I stayed behind, working double shifts for a year to earn it all back. I started college late, exhausted but determined. Nothing ever changed. It only grew bigger. When I graduated at the top of my class, my mother didn't come because Bryn was upset over a breakup. When I landed my first major promotion, my mother smiled politely and asked if I could lend Bryn $2,000. I paid her rent. I fixed her car bills. I paid for acting classes she never showed up to. I bought my mother a condo so she wouldn't struggle with stairs anymore. I honestly believed I was earning their love. I believed that one day my mother would look at me and say, "I'm proud of you. You matter." But I was never her pride. I was her backup plan. Then I met Marcus. He was charming, ambitious. He made me feel seen. He told me I was brilliant. He told me I was beautiful. What I didn't notice at the time was that familiar look in his eyes, the same one my mother had. He didn't see a partner. He saw someone who always gave. I married him believing I had built a better life. Lying in that cold motel room, it finally hit me. I hadn't escaped my old roles. I had simply recreated them. Marcus became the center, the one who needed admiration, the one who consumed everything around him, and I was still the one holding the structure together. Bryn was never the beginning of my pain. She was the ending of a pattern that started long before her. "You're the strong one," my mother's voice echoed in my head. She was right about one thing. I was strong enough to carry all of them for 40 years, and now I was strong enough to stop. I sat up on that noisy mattress and wiped my face. I wasn't going to cry anymore. The sadness had burned itself out, leaving behind something sharper and clearer. They could keep each other, but they would not keep what I built. I reached for my laptop bag. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the daughter who sacrifices or the wife who saves everything. I was going to be the woman who protects what is hers. Morning light crept through the stained curtains as I opened my computer. Inside my bag was something Marcus didn't know about, a portable hotspot I used for work trips. He had shut me out of accounts, but he hadn't shut me out of my mind. I didn't try logging into the bank systems yet. I knew those doors were closed. Instead, I opened a folder labeled SR Internal. If you want to understand what I did next, you have to understand one thing. I didn't just marry Marcus. I built him. I met Marcus 22 years ago at a real estate networking event in downtown Atlanta. He was 30, wearing a suit that nearly fit, holding cheap wine, and gathering people with pure charisma. He had a smile that made you feel like you mattered. I was 25, standing quietly with research reports tucked under my arm. He called me out at the buffet line, joking about the shrimp. I calmly told him his investment projections made no sense. He laughed, and just like that, he was hooked. "I'm a big picture guy," he said. "I need someone who understands the boring details." "The boring details," I told him, "are what keep everything standing." 6 months later, we were married. 1 year after that, we built Sterling Ridge together. Officially, Marcus was the leader, the face, the negotiator. I was everything else. I found the properties. I ran the numbers. I handled the permits. I worked with the city. I managed payroll, contracts, legal compliance, and finances. He stood in the spotlight. I built the stage beneath him. And now, sitting in that motel room with $10 left, I made a promise. What I built once, I could rebuild again. But this time, for myself. That first project should have destroyed us. Marcus bought a rotting warehouse in South Atlanta, convinced it would become luxury lofts. He paid far too much, and the contractor vanished with the deposit. We were nearly broke before we sold a single unit. I still remember sitting at the kitchen table, pregnant with Jerome, staring at red numbers in the ledger, while Marcus paced the room, soaked in sweat and panic. "We're done," he kept saying. "My name is ruined. We'll get taken to court." "Sit down," I told him. I sold the only things that were ever truly mine, my grandmother's jewelry. I emptied my retirement account. I rewrote the loan terms and walked into the bank with a business plan, so detailed the manager said he'd never seen anything like it. I fired Marcus's friend and took charge of the site myself, 8 months pregnant in a hard hat. We finished the project. Every unit sold within 3 weeks. The business press crowned Marcus a genius. Marcus Sterling, the new king of lofts. He brought the magazine home smiling like he'd built it with his hands. Not once did he mention my name in the interview. When I brought it up, he kissed my forehead and said, "The media loves one hero. Besides, you hate the spotlight. You're the mind behind it all." I believed him. I told myself it didn't matter as long as the company thrived. For 20 years, I built the stage. Marcus just walked into the light. The company grew fast. Commercial property, luxury towers, mixed-use developments. On paper, he was the visionary. In reality, I built the entire machine. He hated contracts. He ignored details. He forgot passwords. "Handle it, Simone," was his favorite sentence. So I built the infrastructure, layered LLCs, automated accounts, secure financial systems. And because Marcus feared internal theft, he insisted on a hyper-secure server for sensitive data, offline, encrypted, inaccessible, without a master override. A hidden administrator code. "Only you and I will know it," he said. But he never learned the key. He wrote it down once, then lost it, and went back to relying on me. Sitting in that motel room, I opened my laptop and stared at the login screen for Sterling Ridge's private network. Marcus thought calling the bank locked me out. He thought firing me meant I was gone. He forgot about the back door. I typed the code, a line from my favorite poem, the GPS coordinates of our first building, the date Jerome lost his first tooth. Marcus didn't know any of it. Access granted, administrator level. The entire system unfolded in front of me. Emails, transfers, records, private messages. I wasn't browsing a company. I was walking through the evidence room of my marriage. I started downloading everything. Then I saw it. A folder labeled Project B, Not a Building. Bryn. Inside were transactions. January 12th, $50,000 to Bryn Consulting, LLC. February 14th, $12,000 in high-end purchases. March 1st, luxury rent payments, company money, 3 years. He wasn't just seeing her, he was funding her. Then I noticed something worse. Another company, Orion Holdings Group. The signer wasn't Marcus, it was Bryn. And what was being transferred wasn't just money, it was property, titles, key assets. Marcus was slowly gutting the company, preparing to leave me with a hollow shell while he moved the real value into a business under my sister's name. My chest tightened. This wasn't betrayal. This was a crime. But as I read deeper, something shifted inside me. Because Marcus wasn't careful. He didn't understand documents, and in their rush and arrogance, they made mistakes. Big ones. They had used my name on transfers, forged it, and without knowing it, they had handed me everything. I could see it clearly in the documents. A sloppy copy of my signature pasted onto files it never belonged on. In Orion Holdings Group's registration papers, Bryn had even listed my home as her permanent address. That was it. I had proof. Real proof. Not suspicion, not feelings, evidence, but I couldn't act yet. If I ran straight to the authorities, Marcus would claim it was a technical issue. He'd pay a fine, drag the case through court for years, and bury me under paperwork I couldn't afford to fight. He had money. I had $10. So I didn't move. I waited. I needed them comfortable. I needed them convinced they had crushed me. I shut the laptop slowly. I already had the blueprint. Now I needed the timing. Seeing those files forced me to rewind to the moment Bryn first invaded my life. It started 5 years earlier, when business was booming and I'd gotten careless. Bryn showed up at my door with 2 suitcases and a tearful story. She had just ended her 3rd marriage. She claimed her husband had been cruel. Later, I learned his real crime was canceling her credit card. My mother called minutes after Bryn arrived. "You have all those empty rooms," Carol said. "Let your sister stay for a little while. Family looks after family." I agreed. I always agreed. A week became 6 months. Bryn lounged by my pool like she owned it, drank my wine, and complained about the gardener. Marcus was irritated at first. "She's using us," he said. I defended her. "She's just going through a hard moment." Then came the announcement. "I need a job," Bryn said one evening. "I'm bored." I nearly laughed. She had no qualifications, no experience, no discipline. I said no. Then my mother drove nearly an hour just to meet me for coffee. "Giving Bryn a job will help her grow," she insisted. "If you don't, she'll never move out." Then she added casually, "Marcus thinks it's a good idea too." I felt my stomach drop. I confronted him that night. He adjusted his tie and shrugged. "She'd be perfect for events, client dinners, image stuff. You hate that part. It solves everything." So I created a position, Director of Special Events. At first it looked harmless. Bryn moved into an apartment, one I quietly paid for. She planned a grand holiday party. It was expensive. But it impressed people. Then the shifts began. She dressed for attention, not work. She spent hours inside Marcus's office. They laughed a little too easily. Whenever I walked in, they abruptly stopped. "It's just a joke," she'd say. "You wouldn't understand." Soon she joined him on client lunches, then replaced me at them. "You stay and handle the numbers," Marcus would say. "Bryn and I will entertain the developers." So I stayed, working late, eating alone. While my sister and husband toasted deals I structured, Marcus changed too. New car, younger clothes, later nights. When I expressed concern, my mother dismissed me. "You're imagining it," she said. "Be grateful they get along. Don't ruin it with insecurity." She made me doubt my own eyes, my own instincts. But sitting in that motel, reading Project B, everything finally aligned. Those business trips weren't business. Those dinners weren't meetings. That money wasn't consulting fees. It was support, luxury, gifts. And my mother? She hadn't been deceived. She had engineered it. She wanted Bryn in my place. She wanted her to have the life I had built. I hit the desk with my fist, the shock pulling me back into my body. "All right," I whispered into the empty room. "You want fun? Let's see what happens when the architect removes the foundation." I spent the next 6 hours in a numb, focused haze, dissecting numbers like a surgeon. The hidden login gave me total access, but I couldn't touch anything. One wrong move, one changed file, and the system would alert the IT director, a man who used to trust me, but now worked for Marcus. So I left no trace. I copied. I saved. I followed every dollar. What I uncovered was worse than I imagined. Sterling Ridge wasn't just leaking money, it was bleeding out. Payments were being funneled into Bryn's shell company to support their private luxury life. Contractors hadn't been paid in 3 months. 2 massive loans were already past due. The construction crew for our flagship skyscraper was working without knowing the company behind it was nearly empty. The business I built, my life's work, was hanging by a thread. If lenders discovered the truth, collapse would come within weeks. Then I found something that made my pulse stop. An email chain, Marcus, and a private investigation firm. 2 years old. Subject line, surveillance. Target S, Dubois. Marcus wrote, "I need something, anything. Personal issues, bad habits, instability. I need grounds to cut her off financially." The reply, "We monitored her for 6 months. She works, shops, goes home, works more. There's nothing. She's disciplined and consistent. No evidence." Marcus answered, "Then find something or make something. I'm not splitting my assets." 2 years. He had already planned my removal. Then another email, dated a week ago. "Forget evidence. We'll claim emotional instability. Her mother and sister are cooperating. Board vote scheduled. Once she's forced out, we activate the buyout clause at minimum valuation." My mother had replied, "I'll support this. She's been very stressed lately. I'm worried about her condition. We need to think of the company first." My hands started shaking. My own mother was helping paint me as unstable, so my sister could take my life. "You want unstable?" I whispered to the empty room. I kept digging. Then I found it. Something far bigger than betrayal. Tax documents, loan records. Marcus had inflated rental numbers to secure a massive investment loan. He had fabricated tenant data, created lease agreements that never existed, prices that didn't match properties. This wasn't mismanagement. This was criminal fraud. And here was the final detail. The documents were signed by Marcus, not me. I had been out of town for a funeral that week. He'd assured me he handled everything. He signed his own downfall. I downloaded everything, every false document, every forged lease. I built a file so damaging it could end everything overnight. When I finally looked at the time, it was afternoon. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't slept. My hands shook, not from fear, from clarity. I knew one thing. I needed influence. Lawyers weren't enough. I needed someone powerful, someone who already despised Marcus. And one name came to me instantly: Elijah Vance, a real estate titan in Atlanta, ruthless, wealthy, unforgiving, but fair. Years earlier, Marcus had stolen a high-value land deal from him through a zoning trick that had never made sense. I had warned Marcus not to touch it. He didn't listen. Elijah never forgot. I bought a prepaid phone with cash and returned to the motel. Then I made the call. Vance Enterprises, office of the chairman. I need Mr. Vance. He's in meetings. Tell him Simone Dubois has proof of how Marcus Sterling secured the Beltline deal, and that I have the emails. Silence. Then, 1 moment. 30 seconds later. Mrs. Dubois, a deep voice said carefully. Why are you calling me? Did your husband send you? No, I replied calmly. He locked me out of my company, took my money, replaced me at home. I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here because you and I share an enemy. A pause, then a quiet laugh. Go on. I have evidence that ends him, permanently, I said, and I need protection while it happens. Interesting, he replied. I'm listening. Before I could meet him, there was one more file I had avoided opening. One final weakness. Jerome's trust fund. The only place my heart still hesitated. I had spent my entire life shielding Jerome from his father's selfishness. When Marcus forgot Jerome's birthday, I bought the gift and signed Marcus's name. When Marcus skipped his games, I told Jerome his father was working hard for our future. I taught my son to believe his dad was a hero, and that was my greatest mistake. By protecting Jerome from the truth, I opened the door for Marcus to buy his loyalty with lies. So I opened the trust fund file. Marcus had quietly rewritten everything. The original terms were simple: payout at 25 after graduation. The update, dated 2 weeks earlier, told a different story. Immediate release of $200,000. Transfer of ownership for a brand new Porsche. Then came the messages. Jerome, Mom will lose it if I drop out. Marcus, she won't be in charge much longer. I treat you like a man. Jerome, seriously? Marcus, you want the money, the car? You just back me up. Jerome, what do I have to say? Marcus, tell the lawyers she's unstable. Jerome, well, she does seem stressed lately. Marcus, exactly. Stay with me and I'll make you VP next year. Jerome, VP? I'm in. My chest went hollow. Vice President. Jerome was barely passing basic business courses. He spent most nights gaming and sleeping through mornings. Marcus wasn't preparing him for success. He was setting him up to fail. And Jerome had sold his mother over a title and a luxury car. The message from the night before suddenly made sense. I'm scared he'll cut my tuition. He hadn't been afraid of losing education. He was afraid of losing easy money. I looked at his spending history: late-night charges, entertainment clubs, online betting. Marcus wasn't guiding him. He was feeding the chaos. I picked up the prepaid phone and stared at the screen. He was still my son, but the boy who sat on that sofa wasn't the child I raised. If I kept protecting him, I would lose him to Marcus forever. Some lessons can't be taught. They must be lived. I typed a message but didn't send it. Jerome, I saw the agreements. I know about the money and the car. The path you chose looks easy, but it leads nowhere. When your father finishes using you, he will discard you the same way he did me. I love you enough to stop catching you. Good luck, Mr. Vice President. I saved it. Then I did something I'd never done before. I stopped fixing things for him. I removed his intern paycheck access, a job he never showed up for. Then I opened the insurance system. He was still on my plan. Policyholder, me. Dependent status, removed. Reason, not enrolled full-time. It was a small line change, but it meant independence. My phone buzzed. Elijah Vance sent an address. Peachtree Club, Library Lounge, 1 hour, come alone. I closed my laptop, splashed cold water on my face, and fixed my hair as best I could. My suit was wrinkled, but my eyes were sharp. Lipstick on. Armor applied. The woman in the mirror looked tired, but she also looked dangerous. A storm is coming, I told her quietly. The Peachtree Club smelled like wealth, authority, and old scores. The doorman studied me like I didn't belong. I walked in anyway. Elijah Vance sat in the library with a newspaper and a glass of water, silver hair, no wasted movement. He didn't stand when I approached. "Mrs. Dubois," he said, folding the paper, "you look exhausted." "I am," I replied calmly, "but my mind has never been clearer." "You mentioned the Beltline deal." I opened my computer and turned the screen toward him. 3 years ago, you lost that property to Marcus. You suspected interference. I pointed to the files. This is the payment trail. Here are the messages. And here is the zoning shortcut. Marcus never should have had that land. Elijah's expression didn't change, but something in his gaze sharpened. "You benefited from that deal," he said quietly. "Why show me now?" "Because I never knew," I answered. "Marcus ran 2 worlds. I only owned one." And then I waited. I told him everything, how Marcus had forced me out, cut off my access to money, and moved my sister into my home. For the first time, Elijah actually looked surprised. "And my mother is cheering from the front row," I added with a hollow laugh. "It's a full family celebration, and I'm the only one not invited." Then I leaned in. "I didn't come here to complain. I came here to make a deal. Marcus is trying to erase me. He's forged documents, moved company money, and is draining Sterling Ridge from the inside. If nothing stops him, the company won't survive." Elijah studied me. "Do you want me to rescue it?" he asked calmly. "No," I replied. "I want you to own it, after we take it from him, and in exchange, I give you the Beltline property." He didn't interrupt. "Marcus is cash-starved. He's living on borrowed time. When you offer him a short-term rescue loan, he'll grab it. He won't read the fine print. In the contract, we include a clause that transfers assets if he defaults. And he will, because I know the real numbers." The room went quiet. Then Elijah smiled, not kindly but knowingly. "You're not emotional," he said softly. "You're strategic." "Marcus thinks I'm broken," I said. "He forgot I built everything he owns." Elijah closed the laptop and slid it back to me. "I like you," he said. "You're not dramatic. You're dangerous. I'm assigning my lead attorney to you at no cost. Call it my investment in this partnership." Relief hit me hard. "And Simone," he added. "If we proceed, we finish this. No regrets, no sympathy." "Don't worry," I said. "He won't be asking for forgiveness." Elijah nodded once. "Good. Now let's get you into a real hotel. You can't plan a war without sleep." That night, I stayed at the St. Regis, courtesy of Vance Enterprises. I took a long bath and washed the motel out of my skin. For the first time in weeks, I lay between clean sheets and felt something shift inside me. For 20 years, I had fixed Marcus's mistakes. Now I was going to dissolve everything he thought belonged to him. I sent Elijah one word: ready. 3 days later, the trap was complete. His attorney had prepared a settlement that looked like surrender. Marcus keeps the house. Marcus keeps the company. I walk away with a single payment. No future claims, no fight, perfect bait. Hidden deep in the agreement was the hook. If either party is later found guilty of financial misconduct, fraud, or criminal wrongdoing within 24 months, the deal becomes void. All assets return to the other party. Marcus never read carefully. He never had. We met at his lawyer's office. I dressed small, no makeup, old sweater, eyes down. Marcus arrived glowing with confidence, new suit, smug grin. "Well," he said, ready to disappear quietly. "Just give me the money," I whispered. "I just want this to end." Pierce pushed the folder toward me. "Standard agreement. Sign." My hand shook as I wrote my name, half performance, half fury. "What about Jerome?" I asked softly. "He's with me," Marcus said. "He's joining the company." Something inside me stung, then went numb. "Take care of him," I said. Marcus signed with theatrical flair. "Done," the lawyer said. "Funds will be transferred tomorrow." Marcus stood and straightened his jacket. "You should thank me, Simone. This life was never for you." I forced a faint smile and walked out, with his future already broken, and mine just beginning. "Go start over somewhere quiet," Marcus sneered. "Find a simple life." "Goodbye, Marcus," I whispered. As I walked toward the elevator, I heard him laughing with his lawyer. "That went easier than I thought. She didn't even fight." The doors slid shut, cutting him off mid-laugh. I leaned against the metal wall and finally exhaled. I had signed. The trigger was now active. All that remained was proof, and I already had it. I just needed the right stage. Then I remembered the wedding. Marcus and Bryn had rushed the announcement. 3 weeks. They wanted a grand event, a public seal of approval before social season began. 3 weeks. That was my deadline. I stepped into the waiting car where Elijah sat quietly. "Did he sign?" he asked. I smiled for the first time in days. "He signed. He thinks he bought my silence with cash. He actually signed away everything." Elijah lifted his glass slightly. "To the architect," he said. "To the demolition," I replied. For the next 3 weeks, I became invisible. I rented a small apartment under my maiden name and disappeared from their world. My days were spent with Elijah's forensic team, converting raw data into airtight analysis. Every transaction, every false record, every digital trail was turned into something undeniable. At night, I tortured myself by scrolling through their online posts. Bryn displayed luxury like a trophy case, a new convertible, a caption about being spoiled, photos of my living room redecorated in glitter and excess, out with the old, in with the glam. Watching her erase my fingerprints from the home I built hurt more than I expected. Then came my mother's post. A glimmering photo of her seated beside them at a private dinner. Finally, a family that knows how to enjoy life. Proud of my beautiful daughter and wonderful new son-in-law. True love wins. True love. She traded her firstborn for a place at an expensive table. Jerome didn't post anything, but I didn't need photos. I could see the transactions that still reached my inbox through untouched channels. High-end bottles, nightlife tabs that made my stomach turn. Even a payment to a bail service. My son wasn't being guided. He was being let loose. Everything in me wanted to run to him, to pull him out, but Elijah stopped me. "You cannot rescue someone who doesn't believe they're falling," he told me gently. It felt like tearing off a piece of myself. Meanwhile, Sterling Ridge was unraveling. 2 employees I trusted fed me updates. He barely showed up anymore. Vendors weren't getting paid. Staff were confused. Design meetings were now fashion debates. Contractors were threatening to walk away from our largest project. "Money's on the way," Marcus told them. It wasn't. The wedding was being paid for instead. "Let it burn," I said quietly to my team. "Just record everything." The venue was the city's most elegant ballroom. 300 guests, investors, officials, high society. They wanted a spotlight. Good. Then, 2 days before the ceremony, something unexpected happened. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Simone, it's Derek, Bryn's ex-husband, the man she drained and discarded." "You okay?" I asked softly. "I'm getting back on my feet." He hesitated. "But listen, I found something." When Bryn left him, she left behind a box of paperwork in his garage. He opened it. Inside were credit notices in my name. Cards taken out years ago. Opened while Bryn lived in my home. She had grabbed the mail before I ever saw it, maxed them out, then hidden the damage. But that wasn't even the worst part. There was a note from Marcus. He had paid off one of the balances, and in the letter he warned her, "Be more careful. If Simone sees this, it's over. 2 more years and we take everything." 2 more years. It all aligned. This wasn't chaos. It was design. I asked Derek one thing. "Can you bring me the box?" An hour later, I held proof that confirmed everything I already knew. This wasn't betrayal. It was coordinated, calculated, predatory. I locked the letter away. "Thank you," I told him. He nodded grimly. "Take them down." "Oh," I replied. "I will." The day before the wedding, I broke one rule. I went to see Jerome. Elijah warned me not to, but I was still his mother. I needed to give him one last exit. I waited outside his new place, the one Marcus bought with company funds. Late morning, the door opened. Jerome walked out. Dark glasses, luxury hoodie, last night still written on him. I stepped forward. "Jerome," I called out. He flinched and spun around. The moment he saw me, his face hardened. "What are you doing here? Following me now?" "I'm not following you," I said carefully. "I'm trying to protect you." "I don't need protection," he snapped, heading toward his car. "I'm doing better than ever. Dad just put me in charge of the Southern portfolio." "Jerome, stop," I said, stepping in front of him. "Your father is lying to you. The company is collapsing. He's draining it to fund this lifestyle, and he's using you to cover it." He laughed, sharp, empty. "You're just mad. Dad is winning and you're nothing. You're probably living in some tiny place now." That's what he told me. "I'm living in truth," I said, my voice urgent. "Please don't go to that wedding tomorrow. Tell them you're sick. Stay with friends. Just don't stand next to him when everything falls apart." "When what falls apart?" he mocked. "You going to make a scene? That's what Dad said you'd do. Honestly, you're embarrassing." It felt like being struck. "Look at me," I said quietly. "I raised you. You are better than this. You're not a liar. You're not greedy. This isn't who you are." "I'm not a criminal," he shouted. "I'm a businessman, just like him." "He's a fraud," I shot back. "And if you stick with him, you'll go down with him." His jaw tightened. Then he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling building security." He climbed into his car, slammed the door, and hit the accelerator. As he sped away, he leaned out the window and yelled, "Don't show up tomorrow. Nobody wants you there. You're done." I stood there, long after his car disappeared. Something in me broke, but this time, it broke clean. I had tried. I had offered him an exit. He chose his side. I went back to my apartment, where Elijah was waiting with final details. "How did it go?" he asked gently. "He's gone," I said, completely under their spell. "Then he'll learn," Elijah replied. "Are you ready for tomorrow? The technical team is in position. Everything is set." He handed me a garment bag. "Put this on." Inside was a sleek black suit, sharp lines, controlled, unshakable. "This is your armor," Elijah said. "Tomorrow, you don't walk in as the one they broke. You walk in as the one who ends it." I barely slept that night. I watched the lights of the city flicker outside my window and imagined Marcus and Bryn rehearsing their promises, laughing about how clever they were. They believed they had years. They didn't even have one more day. Morning came in gray and heavy. I reviewed the final presentation piece by piece. The timing was flawless. It would begin right after the romantic video they had spent a fortune on. At sunset, guests filled the ballroom. I watched through the live feed Elijah had secured. Pink roses covered everything, crystal chandeliers blazing overhead, excess on display. There was my mother, glowing, proud, like she had finally won something. "Isn't it perfect?" she gushed to relatives. "They're destined for each other. Simone couldn't handle Marcus's success, but Bryn, she understands him." Then Marcus arrived, smiling, shaking hands, playing royalty. And Bryn, wrapped in glitter and confidence, beautiful on the surface, rotten underneath. They said their vows, promises of devotion, promises of loyalty. I sat alone upstairs, coffee in my hand. Every word is a lie. I whispered. Are we live? Elijah asked quietly. Wait, I said. Not yet. The music swelled, glasses clinked. Marcus stood to give his speech. This is the happiest day of my life, he announced. Sometimes you have to make hard choices to find your real happiness. Polite applause rippled through the room. And then I smiled, because it was time. They didn't care what the speech was about, as long as the drinks were expensive. And to my beautiful wife, Marcus declared, lifting his glass, you are my inspiration, my strength, my world. My phone buzzed. The signal. Now, I whispered. In the ballroom, the lights dimmed and soft music began. The love video rolled across the giant screens, yachts, beaches, glamorous cityscapes. Guests sighed on cue. I stood, straightened my jacket, and walked for the elevator. Showtime, Elijah said quietly as he followed. The elevator slid downward. 10, 9. My pulse was calm, heavy, certain. The doors opened. Inspector Miller and 2 officers waited near the entrance. We're ready, he said. Give me 5 minutes, I replied. Let them see everything first. He nodded. At the ballroom doors, security stepped forward. This is a private event. Elijah came beside me. I own this property. Move. They did. The double doors opened. On screen, Marcus and Bryn were laughing under city lights. Then the screen glitched. The video cut. Music snapped off. And an accounting sheet filled the room. Red numbers. Then a transaction notice. Name, Bryn Dubois. Address, my home purchase, diamond ring account, Sterling Ridge corporate funds. A uneasy murmur swept the guests. What is this? Bryn whispered. Marcus shouted toward the booth. Shut it down. But our technician didn't stop it. He turned up the volume, and my voice echoed through the ballroom speakers. Hello, Marcus. Hello, Bryn. The 2 of you wanted witnesses, my recorded voice said. So let's be honest with them. Everyone turned, not to the screens, to me. I walked through the center aisle like it belonged to me, heels tapping against marble. Marcus's face drained. Bryn clutched her dress. My mother looked like all the air had left her body. I came to give a toast, I said calmly, stopping at the center of the room. I lifted the remote. Click. An email appeared behind them. Marcus ordering private investigators to invent a reason to cut me out financially. Gasps, voices rising. Marcus tried to move forward. Sit down, Elijah said firmly from the doorway. Marcus froze. Someone whispered. Police were visible near the exit. This is fake, Bryn cried. She's making it up. I clicked again. Loan documents, forged papers, the pasted signature. Forgery is only funny until handcuffs show up, I said quietly. Click. Another file. Orion Holdings Group. Owner, Bryn Dubois. You're not the star of this story, I told her evenly. You're the courier. You were used to move money. Bryn stared at Marcus in shock. You told me it was normal. Be quiet, Marcus snapped. I raised my remote again. This next part is for my mother. Click. An email. Subject line. The old lady Marcus's words. Jokes. Disrespect. A plan to keep Carol quiet with money. My mother made a strangled sound. You called me that? She whispered. After everything I gave up? Yes, I answered softly. You chose wrong. The room had changed. Guests were moving. Investors whispered urgently. Some slipped out the side exits. Marcus looked around, wild-eyed. You signed the papers, he yelled. You walked away from everything. I met his eyes and smiled. I signed exactly what you deserved. You can't touch the company, Marcus shouted. Section 34, I replied calmly. If a serious crime is proven, the entire agreement collapses. The house, the business, every asset returns to the other party. The color drained from his face. His knees gave way and he sank into his chair. Then I turned to my son. Jerome. He was pale, frozen in place as his own messages appeared on the screen behind him. VP? Seriously? I'm in. You wanted to be a business professional, I said quietly. Here's lesson 1. Always know who you're standing beside. I tapped the remote again. A video appeared from the office parking cameras. It showed Marcus and Bryn arguing days earlier. "He's a problem," Marcus said in the clip. "Once we get the funding, we distance ourselves. We leave him with the consequences and go abroad. He won't even realize what happened." The room went dead silent. Jerome stood slowly. "Dad, you were going to leave me." Marcus stammered. "You don't understand. I was under pressure." "You called me useless," Jerome said. "You said I didn't matter." The last illusion in his eyes vanished. He set his glass down with shaking hands and walked away from Marcus without another word. I lowered the remote. It was over. I nodded once. The officers stepped forward through the stunned crowd. "Marcus Sterling, you are in custody in connection with financial crimes and document falsification. Bryn Dubois, you are also in custody in connection with financial wrongdoing." Bryn broke down, insisting she didn't understand anything. The officers calmly guided her away. Marcus didn't shout. He just stared at me as if his world had fractured in two. "You destroyed me," he hissed. I met his eyes. "I didn't destroy anything," I said softly. "I showed people the truth." He was led out as the room remained frozen in disbelief. My mother was crying quietly. The cake stood untouched. The flowers were perfect. Only the illusion had shattered. I turned to Elijah. "I think we're done here." He offered his arm. "Extraordinary." We walked out. I didn't look back. Not then. The story exploded across the city within hours. Headlines, footage, commentary. I said nothing. The truth didn't need help traveling. 3 days later, I returned home. The police had cleared the property. Every room felt foreign. Bryn's belongings were still scattered around like she had claimed the place. I hired a cleaning team. "Remove everything that isn't mine," I said. "Replace what needs replacing." I wanted a reset, not revenge. A clean page. Marcus was not granted release. Investigators considered him a flight risk because of the plans he had discussed on video. Bryn was released temporarily after my mother used her remaining savings for legal help. But the case against her was public. Her name was everywhere. A week later, my mother appeared on my doorstep. She looked years older. Her voice shook. "Simone, please." I stayed behind the doorframe. "Say what you came to say from here." "Bryn is scared," she whispered. "She didn't mean for any of this. He influenced her." "So Bryn is an adult," I replied. "She made choices." "She's your sister," my mother cried, "and she knew exactly what she was doing." My mother's voice hardened. "If you don't stop this, you're no daughter of mine." I breathed in slowly. "You stopped being my mother a long time ago, when you decided one child mattered more than the other." She opened her mouth. I continued. "You didn't come to say you're sorry. You came to ask me to fix things again, to save her the way I always did." Silence. "I saw the money transfers," I added gently. "The payments you accepted in exchange for helping keep secrets." She broke down. "I'm not going to report you," I said. "Not because you deserve mercy, but because I refuse to carry this shame any further." Then I stepped back. "But we are finished. Don't call me. Don't come here again." I paused at the door. "And if you ever need help." I opened it once more. "Ask Bryn." Then I closed it. For the last time, I closed the door and watched through the security camera as she stood there, pounding on it and shouting my name. Then her shoulders finally dropped. She turned and walked away. It hurt. Of course it did. But it was the kind of pain that comes when you pull out something that's been hurting you for years. Sharp at first, and then relief. Jerome didn't call. He didn't come by. I later learned he was sleeping on a friend's couch after the apartment, and the car were taken back as part of the investigation. I didn't chase him. I needed him to come to me because he wanted to, not because I rescued him again. 2 weeks later, he showed up at my office. He looked nothing like the young man who had walked away from me at that parking garage. He was thinner. No designer shoes, no sunglasses, just worn-out jeans and a plain t-shirt. "Mom," he said quietly from the doorway. I looked up. "Hello, Jerome." He came in and sat down, staring at his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was wrong. He made me feel important. He told me I didn't need school. He told me you were holding me back. And I believed him because it was easier than working for something myself." "That's the truth," I said gently. Tears slid down his face. "I saw the video. He said I was useless. He planned to leave me behind. I have nothing now. I need help." Every instinct in me wanted to hug him, pull out my checkbook and fix everything. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I looked at him carefully. "I love you, but I'm not giving you money." His head snapped up. "Then where am I supposed to go?" "I don't know. That part is yours to solve." I slid 2 pieces of paper across the desk. One is a student loan application. The other is a job application for the mailroom at Phoenix Realty. Entry level. You take night classes. You work during the day. His eyes widened. "The mailroom?" "Start where everyone starts," I said. "If you want to become a man, you earn it. Your father gave you things to keep you attached. I'm giving you the chance to build yourself." He stared at the papers for a long moment, then picked up the pen. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll do it." "Good. HR will give you your badge. Don't be late." He stood to leave, then paused and looked at me. "You're kind of scary now, Mom." I smiled slightly. "I know. Go to work." The legal process did not take long. The evidence was undeniable. Marcus accepted responsibility rather than face a much longer sentence. He never once looked in my direction in the courtroom. Bryn reached her own agreement. My mother sat in the gallery, helpless, watching the consequences unfold. I didn't feel happiness. I felt calm, like a balance had finally returned. A year later, I stood in my office on the 40th floor, looking out over the city. The name Phoenix Realty shined behind my desk in clean silver and blue. The company was strong. The Beltline project with Elijah was moving forward, not just luxury homes, but apartments people could really afford, and a community space for families. My phone buzzed. Jerome. "Finished my economics final. Think I did great. Also, our department increased sorting speed by 15% this week. Does that mean a raise yet?" I smiled and typed back, "Don't rush it. Dinner is on me tonight." He was tired, he had very little money, and he had never looked better to me in my life. A knock came at the door. "Come in." Elijah walked in holding a bottle. "1 year," he said, "since everything changed." "Feels like another lifetime," I replied. He leaned against the desk. "You know, Marcus wrote me recently. Wanted to know if I'd buy what's left of his old business interests." I laughed. "What did you say?" I told him I only negotiate with active leaders, and you're busy building something real. We raised our glasses. I looked out at the skyline. I had lost a husband. I had lost a sister. I had lost a mother. But I found myself. I was no longer the one who fixed everything for everyone else. I was no longer invisible. I was no longer afraid. I was Simone, and my life finally belonged to me. Thank you for listening to my story. If it helped you even a little, then it was worth telling. Family is not just about shared history. Family is about respect and love, and standing beside each other when life gets hard. If someone in your life only brings you pain, even if they share your name, it's okay to walk away. You are strong enough to build something new. If you enjoyed this story, tap the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments, have you ever walked away from someone who hurt you? Where are you watching from? I read every message and I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, stay strong, stay smart, and never let anyone take the keys to the life you worked so hard to build.